My name's Chris.
And I'm Kristie.
This is the Washing Up Podcast.
And Tansei. It means hello in Cree, I learnt today. Care of Jodie.
And we learnt that care of, yes, Jodie from season 3 of Great Canadian Bake Off. And we'll explain why a little bit later on, but I gave a bit of a hint before on the Twitter. So obviously we've just finished Canadian Week.
Yeah, what's that all about?
It is, well, what is it all about? Well, it's all about the idea that we have obviously the most Canadian person going home and the
British person winning Canadian Week.
And yes, James, I know, long settled in Canadian as apple pie, we know.
We know.
But, you know, it's just really funny, the idea of the person who Kristie once described as bleeding maple syrup and pooping hockey pucks goes home on Canadian Week. I mean, it's just kind of appropriate. I mean, technically her existence said, "This is my week."
It did, unfortunately, which I think just put her at a disadvantage. And the look of shame she gave when she came last in the technical, I'm sorry. She's like apologising to her whole nation.
Well, they were the maple cookies, the maple leaf cookies. Yeah. And like Jude had the look of shame, and it was attached to the Stone of Shame moment from the Stonecutters.
Yes.
So Canadian Week was, it's interesting, obviously, not being in Canada, just to see Canadian Week, to see what they obviously select for Canadian Week, which is always, it's like when they do a British week, and, you know, obviously next week, as they sort of teased already, is British week, so that'll be really fascinating to watch there. But I think from an outside perspective, I mean, I don't know what I was thinking they were going to do for Canadian Week. I mean, obviously we did get poutine.
Well, the thing is like every nation has its, you know, its bakes that, you know, like Neenish tarts in Australia, which Canadians would go, what the fuck is a Neenish tart? And then Australians would then argue over what colours Neenish tart.
No, they wouldn't argue. It's quite clear. It's pink.
No, it's brown and white, as per the documentary.
Pink and brown. Anyway, moving on. Aaron Lamington. Which is less controversial.
Did I say pink and white?
No, you said brown. You said brown and white, and I said no, pink and brown.
No,
which is the correct answer. Anyway, Aaron Lamington, which is not controversial unless you were on a series of MasterChef Australia and made a white one, which was an abomination to mankind.
Yes. I believe that person has been shipped off to Nauru to be placed
probably
in detention.
Probably, in all honesty. So, obviously, with Canadian Week, I said we got some poutine. Granted, in donut form.
Look, isn't that the most Canadian thing you could get, though? Is poutine in donut form?
And look, possibly. I was waiting for Timbits, you know, obviously for Tim Hortons over in Canada.
Yeah, that's next season.
Yeah, that's next season when we meet Tim. But obviously, I was expecting something along those lines, maybe.
I honestly don't know. I knew I wanted to see maple syrup and bacon. And we got both of those.
Oh, we got a lot of bacon.
I liked learning about the tortilla, which it's nice to see the variations on a meat pie. Because, like, for me, it looked like a cross between a meat pie and a pork pie. In that, you know, the filling was supposed to be kind of hard and held together, unlike an Australian meat pie, which is gravy and spills out.
Yeah.
And like a pork pie, which is solid and just, you can carve off a chunk.
Yeah, and this was sort of a hybrid version where you got... basically the runniness in the pie was the fat, which we'll come to that. We'll come to that.
That was the moisture more than the runniness.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. I'm talking about the idea of it being somewhat moist relies on fat, which is a little bit more like a sausage roll in many ways.
Yeah,
you know. And again, I have made, and it's on the washing up page, for example, I made duck sausage rolls,
which will never fail to remind people every time we mention a sausage roll. You go into a servo, you walk past the pie cabinet, see your handy-dandy sausage rolls being, like, warmed up there. You're like, did I tell you about the time I made duck sausage rolls?
Just for a moment. Were they good?
Yes. I'm not complaining about how good they were, but just the reminders. But, you know, please do go on about your duck sausage rolls. Please.
Anyway, moving on. I actually had a point about it, but apparently I can't bring up the past.
No, you can.
I can't bring up the past in a Rewatch podcast, everybody. It's a Rewatch podcast. I'm not allowed to bring up the past. So we'll just move on instead. And I'm not going to talk about basically what I was going to say, which is that when you make duck sausage rolls, normally they mix the duck with something like a pork. Because of the duck being quite lean.
Yes.
And so as a result, that doesn't quite work for the sausage roll. What I came up with the compromise was I put a ton of duck fat in there.
Yes,
and the
you did.
duck fat was actually able to counterbalance. So when I actually put the breast through the mincer, what I actually did was left the duck fat on it so that you got a mixed up quantity. It's a little bit like that in a tortilla. Anyway, apparently this is a tortured tortilla reference, and we can move on. So let's get in.
Have I told you an anecdote from my past?
Yeah, please, come on. Tell me about the cherry tart. Anyway, moving on. So the tortilla is usually pork based. Now, obviously, the reason for it being pork based is that fat.
Yeah,
using the fat. Bruno described my life quite aptly when Bruno said that basically this pie was about crust and fat. And I feel like it describes me, it's my life. It's my life. I feel like I've lived the embodiment of this for...
If you were going to do a fashion label, I'd say crust and fat.
Crust and fat?
Yeah.
No, it feels more like a range of home goods, like your bathroom.
Like salt and pepper.
No, like bathroom, where you go into a hotel and there's remember when hotels were a thing?
Yes. Remember those old days when we used to go on holidays?
And visit people.
We used to go to places other than our home.
Yeah. So when you walk in, they'd have like the set of like the shower gels and the small ones in the tubes. I feel like crust and fat. That would be the brand. Have you had crust and fat? It nourishes. Anyway, what I enjoyed rewatching this episode, we started watching the episode, and I just looked at Kristie and I said, this gave us one of my favourite podcast titles of all time.
Yes. Was it
Bison, lamb, was it?
Bison, yam.
Bison, yam,
turkey and ham.
And lamb. Bison, yam, turkey and lamb. That's what it was. And it's one of my favourite titles that we've ever had for a podcast, and it just came from one sentence, and that one sentence could only be about one person's food. Jude. I was questioning at the time if maybe there was too much in there. Like every time they cut back to Jude, there was another element going into her pie.
It was like a turducken, but in pie form. Like, if she said, now I'm just going to add some I don't know, like penguin.
Well, at one point she said, I'm going to put in extra bison because you can never have too much bison. And I'm like, the phrase extra bison is not something I'm used to. And in fact, when I was typing my notes to remind me, it kept on saying that I wanted to say vision because no doubt it was going, no one in their right mind has ever written bison this many times.
But you, and in this show, of course you've got to add extra bison.
Every time you're mentioning Jude, the bison comes up. So, again, I've never had bison, obviously.
No, we don't get it in Australia.
If people in Canada would like to give us the general gist of the flavour, go for it by all means.
I'm presuming it's a slightly gamier, kind of beefy.
Beef. That's what I'm going with it.
Probably a bit leaner because they're, running around in their, native habitat. Like kangaroos, Not that I'm thinking bison are hopping around, just telling people about what crimes are happening and having people follow them to the scene of where Timmy's fallen down the well.
That was a very long and tortured reference to Skippy.
Yes, it was.
Really long and tortured. I do like the fact that, Jude's was tortilla a la Vancouver Island, which I loved because it was about the size of Vancouver Island. It was solid. It
did look like a pork pie. Like
if the pavilion
came and the crust.
If the pavilion had started to lean, they could have used it to chalk it up.
Yeah, just stump the foundations with Jude's pie.
And I'm sure Rochelle, by the way, would have been up for that because we had a very Australian Rochelle evening.
Oh, we did.
So she would have been, bung it under there.
Just whack it on.
Yeah, we got a ton of Aussie Rochellisms.
Like when she came to James's pie. Let's move to James's tortilla. And he's like, I'm doing a vegetarian one that may them both go, and then they've eaten it and they've gone, whew, and Rochelle's like, the beetroot's really got it, giving it some colour.
Yeah, as opposed to all of the beets references that we're getting. But so let's talk about James's, shall we? Because this was the episode in the original series where I learnt the harsh truth about my Patronus.
He's a vegetarian.
I learnt that he was a vegetarian. I also learnt something, again, following up more shocking, obviously, that Vandana was also making a vegetarian one.
Yeah.
Again, Vandana, Chris's favourite baker, Vandana, what's she baking today? Sadness. No, actually,
Well, it would be delicious.
it looked fucking amazing. I'll give her full credit for that.
Yeah,
it looked like a tart. Mm-hmm. Like it looked like a thin tart, not so much like a tortilla or a pie.
Well, I wanted to ask you, has it gotten any easier? You know, it's been a year since you've discovered it. I mean,
it's been 2 years, really.
Yeah, 2 years.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? Like,
look,
is it any harder?
I've come to terms, especially given, you know, the fact that we have both of them on the Christmas special. And we've spoken to James a couple of times now, and, you know, no doubt, fingers crossed, coming up again soon. I've come to terms with it. I mean, I wonder, I mean, maybe next time he's on, we have to ask him, has he come to terms with the fact that one of his favourite, you know, supporters and somebody who views him as a Patronus, how does he feel to have someone who's such a strong meat eater following him passionately and dedicated to the craft? But look, I think that he sort of won me back a little bit with the goggles.
Yes.
The goggles was fucking genius.
I just, you know, swing past the rain that was pissing down, to use in another Australianism, which I'm sure Rochelle used in the tent. Should have gone, I'm not going out there, it's pissing down.
So, again, like, the other thing was with of course, with James's one is, and you know this, and I've made mention of this many times before on the podcast, beetroot's not my favourite thing on the planet.
No.
So...
But in that context, you wouldn't be getting the texture of it. You'd have a little bit of the flavour, but I reckon it would just sweeten that up.
And this sort of brings it to something I wanted to talk about with regards to the tortilla. So, obviously, they were talking about fat. And they were talking about the fat content was everything with regards to the way the tortilla works. Mm-hmm. So, obviously, that was to balance the meat and the possible dryness of the meat. Now, the two vegetarians... didn't have to worry about that level of dryness from the meat.
No, but they had to get the flavour right.
They had the flavour right, but I'm not saying they had it easier. That wasn't what I was saying. But what I'm saying is both of theirs worked out really well. And I mean, in hindsight, I'm not surprised they worked out really well because the consistency that they needed, they didn't need the extra levels of... The fat, like balancing fat with the meat is tricky. It's not an easy balance.
But let's think of how well... James's pie must have tasted when you've got someone like Terry and Linda who obviously make these quite regularly. I mean, Terry was talking about her Christmas Eve tradition of...
Yep.
I mean, that's pretty cool. You wouldn't make it in Australia. It'd be too fucking hot.
Yeah.
Like...
Oh, my family might. My family might make it.
How crazy is it when your Australian family insists, like, okay, the first time we had Christmas up when Mum and Bob were living in Queensland, and okay, Queensland's in the north of Australia, for those listening outside of Australia, it's closer to the equator, therefore it's fucking hot all year round. So, you know, Australia's Christmas is obviously in the summertime. My stepfather insisted on doing a full fucking roast dinner in the middle of a fucking heat wave, including pork, which he makes really well and does really good crackling, or he used to. He's gotten a bit old now.
I did the crackling last time we were there.
You did, because he's lost his touch, unfortunately. And it just, and not only that, but we had to sit outside because he refused to allow us to put the air conditioning on. And so we were boiling our tits off outside. Luckily, there was a gazebo, so there was a little bit of shade, eating a full fucking roast dinner.
Oh, we did roast every year. Like, but seafood is part of it.
Yeah.
We did a full seafood once, and my grandmother wasn't particularly impressed, so we stuck back to roasts again, and everyone seems to like do the roast non-stop.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm always in favour of a seafood one. I'm open to ideas. But
like the roast, I think, can be done if you're allowed to have air conditioning in your fucking house.
But what I liked, for example, was Terry's obviously it's a great tradition she's got there. Mm-hmm. With the Christmas Eve tortilla, what I liked about the Christmas Eve tortilla was it featured bacon.
And turkey. I actually want to make it. I think that would be delicious.
You can make it. I'm not, again, turkey. Yeah. I don't know what it is.
Turkey?
Yeah, I don't know what it is with turkey. I don't like... There's something about...
Turkey shoulder, cranberry
There's something
sauce.
about... You're welcome to it. There's something about turkey that doesn't quite work for me. I can't work out what it is.
You know what really got me into turkey? Uh-huh. Okay, so when I used to work for a disability...
Was it through Syria and then... No. Yeah. Go, please.
I worked at a disability service place, and every year we do our Christmas party at this particular club. And every year they would serve up, and it was beautifully done, this thinly sliced of beef, glazed ham and turkey. And, you know, club meals are club meals. People in Australia will know what I'm talking about. But it was just really well done. And the turkey on that was so fucking perfect. I'm like, oh, I need to try this. So, you know, I did a turkey shoulder one, you know, the pre-bought made ones, and they're quite nice.
Mum loves turkey. Mum's a big fan of turkey. But, I mean, I personally would have just had the bacon in Terry's one. I would have been perfectly happy. That bacon looked really good.
But that said, if I could choose between turkey and Turkish bread with dips, go to Turkish bread with dips.
Good call. Now, what I loved as well was Sabrina was talking about, obviously, then, you know, for the home province.
Yes.
She had to make this, and she said, you know, I will get in a lot of trouble if I screw this up. Now, what Sabrina decided to focus on instead was she homemade gravy and she made homemade sauces.
Yeah,
and she said, you know, she goes, some people like ketchup, some people like gravy. I'm making both.
But did she make catsup?
Catsup or ketchup? Catsup. What... We also got a bit more, and again, we have to enjoy the Jude, you know, whimsy while we can, obviously.
I know.
Jude was explaining the fact that because she has so many things inside her, she decided to add oatmeal as well, because why not?
Because it catches all the juices and
because every time we cut back to Jude, she had to put something else. I was starting to wonder if it was originally just a one ingredient tortilla, and every time the cameras went on her, Jude was like, something else.
It's like the stone soup recipe, you know? That old myth.
Yeah.
The guy's like, this stone soup would taste better with a bit of onion.
Yeah. So what I loved was, like, when they cut back, and you mentioned it, when they cut back to Jude, and she was doing the oatmeal explanation about how it would sop up all the grease and the juices. But
the little finger action.
It was flautist fingers.
Like she was just, like, tickling the underbelly of a cow or something.
See, I went playing
That's how you bring down the milk.
I went playing the flute. Kristie went to tickling the udders of a cow.
Well, wouldn't you? Like, you've got 4 little udders.
Would I tickle the udders of a cow? Did it ask?
I just figured
bovine consent is a thing.
That's true.
You know, as you saw, I was once at a conference where they suggested to us that we needed to be friends with the cows.
Yes, you were.
Which led to you giving me the greatest drawing ever. I'm a cow. Be my friend. Anyway, so Bruno gave us the warning at this point in time. He turned around to Jude and he goes, look, I hear you're adding cloves. And, like, Jude's like, well, I am now. Well, not actually what she said. But again, I assume in her head this was another... I
wasn't going to, but now you mentioned it.
Either it was the cameraman, and every time the camera turned around, she felt like she had to do something.
Yeah.
Or someone was just putting stuff on the table. I like the idea that there was someone behind the camera, and every time Jude turned around, they put something on the bench. And when she turned back, she's like, oh, I was putting that in, that's right, and just got lost.
Just Dan got a bit bored, decided to Jim-style prank her, like from The Office. Just
next thing, turns around, her tortilla's in Jell-O.
Yeah.
But when she turned back around, he's like, oh, you're using cloves? And she's like, yeah, oh, you got to balance up those cloves. Warning. Big warning, that's your warning. But as I said, it sort of didn't really matter because by this point in time, Jude had most of Canada in there. She had some bison, she had some lamb, some turkey, there was yams.
Justin Trudeau.
The Toronto Maple Leafs were in there. Well, they certainly
John
weren't.
Candy.
They certainly weren't on the ice. Hey-o! Zing to all my hockey-loving friends out there. Zing! They had, they had all these sorts of things. They had, all of the Trudeaus, not just Justin. They had Pierre as well. They're throwing them all in there. Yeah, John Candy, Dan Aykroyd was in there as well.
Celine Dion, Alanis Morissette.
Well, they mentioned Celine Dion later on as well. The great French-Canadian Swiss. Dave Coulier is always there.
Yeah.
Dave Coulier he's not even invited. He's just there. In fact, Robin Sparkles.
Robin Daggers.
Robin Sparkles and Robin Daggers.
Yeah.
Both of them were there. Let's go to
Paul Schaefer.
Paul Schaefer. Let's go to the tortilla today. So I actually really liked, as I said, James announces he's vegetarian and using beetroot. I forgive you. And Vandana talked about, now the chickpea and cashew actually looked good.
Yeah.
And the decoration on top of it. And by the way, can I just point out, both Vandana and James has been criticised for his decoration. I think sometimes a little bit unfairly.
So I think Vandana's was good from the outset because one, she was doing the mint yogurt by the side of it, but from what I could see, and she was obviously using like some kind of like curry spice, like just like some nice,
It looked good.
like, yeah, just
And then-
deliciousness.
And then James also did comment as well that rocks and Christmas trees mean Canada to James. What the fuck?
See, rocks and Christmas trees can also be like Germany, Switzerland,
Yeah, there's lots of places.
lots of places in Europe,
in fact, far more places in Europe.
lots of places in North America.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was a bit interesting that that's what Canada is to James. Rocks and Christmas trees. Although, science. So, possibly. It actually makes sense. Now, yeah, Jude's... the best way I described how Jude's looked at the end of this was... It was as though Mike TV from Willy Wonka had sort of got hold of a small pork pie and put it through Wonka Vision.
Yes, maybe.
And like done the reverse of like the big bar into the small bar and taken the small pie and made it a jumbo pie. And like
pie.
Jude was about to jump into the Wonka Vision after that and make herself Mega Jude. Anyway,
Who's go stomping around the Canadian
so they had
television.
Terry's worked quite
Nice.
well. They really liked Terry and everything held together in Terry's beautifully, and they're like, that's what it should look like.
Yeah.
Julian had done some smoked tomatoes as well.
Oh, that was amazing. When Dan sat down and goes, "Is this safe?"
And they're like, it smells like we're at a campsite. And they're
Yes.
like, not a bad thing.
No.
They said the pie itself was a bit dry. Jude got everything right except the cloves. And what I love about Jude as well, among many things, is the expressive nature whenever
Really
they
like
give...
getting all your Jude out.
But as they give her feedback, you
Yeah.
ride the wave. They go, that is great. She goes, yeah. And they go, except for, and she goes, oh. And you get the full range of facial expressions. It's like one of the claymation figures she talked about in our podcast when we talked to her the other week, where she talked about, making those little claymation figures.
Yeah.
It's that facial expression. It's, yeah, ooh, ah, ooh. So Sabrina's was way too dry. Sabrina's like, they cut it. Mm-hmm. And like she's like, I can't disappoint the province. And they pulled it, like it's collapsed.
it was real...
You know what it looked like? It looked like someone had got like taco mince
Yes.
and like covered it in pastry, and she just picked it up and it like collapsed.
Look, I just feel if she poured a gravy into it and threw some mashed potato on top, shepherd's pie.
Good gravy, thank you. It's just brown and onion. So.
Could so go a shepherd's pie right now.
Oh god. Anyway, moving on. Linda's looked amazing because it's Linda, and it just looked good. Vandana's looked really low, but the flavour was delicious, and they pointed out that the pastry was, in Bruno's words, buttery. They also said that James is held together absolutely beautifully, and the beets made it look like meat, and the texture just worked. And Bruno gave him the greatest compliment of all, I am not missing meat.
That's what she said.
I would have been missing the meat. Anyway. I'm over it. I'm fine.
Let it go.
I'm fine.
Elsa this shit.
I'm fine.
I can see that.
Anyway, moving on.
Moving right along.
Yes, moving to the technical. So the technical was 16 maple leaf cookies. Now, at the time we did this, the first time, I rubbished this a little bit.
Of course you did.
Let me explain why I rubbished this.
And then add your retraction.
No. So, I rubbished this because it's basically a cookie sandwich shaped like a maple leaf. And I felt like it was probably somewhat mass-produced.
So?
Turns out, if you go through, it says... Several Canadian companies produce it, mostly for the domestic market. They're basically mass-produced.
Well, it'd be like, for a technical, asking Australians to make an iced Vovo.
They would not, because they would feel that was sacrilege.
And they could just change it into an iced vulva.
Ask them to make a Tim Tam,
Do it
the
in
same
a yoni
thing.
shape.
You know the rules. You've read the Constitution of Australia. If they say to you, can you make a homemade Tim Tam? What is the correct answer?
No.
No, exactly.
Yeah, but no one can make a homemade Tim Tam because even the Brits who claim penguins are superior are full of shit because Tim Tams, like, if someone's gone to Aldi and bought fake Tim Tams and tried to pass them off as real
You don't
ones,
need them in your life.
You're like, fuck you, bastards. Like, that is so un-Australian. Like,
I believe from memory that Tim Tams are one of the few things that Aldi sell that are branded. I'm fairly certain that even Aldi went, nah, don't fuck with that.
But every time anyone tries to, and they're like chalky if they're not the real ones, it's just sadness. So you wouldn't want to make, but an iced Vovo you could do.
Well, no. Anyway.
What about TikTok? little biscuit with
Not flossing?
Not flossing.
Oh, damn it.
You know the TikTok
I
biscuit?
know what a TikTok is, yes.
My nephew was obsessed with them when he was 3.
So if you
The
don't,
second eldest one.
if you're not in Australia and you don't know what a TikTok is, look it up. Anyway, not the
It's a
app
biscuit with icing and sprinkles on top.
with a clock on it. It's like Flavor Flav would have worn them. Yeah, boy. Anyway, so
Anyone want some tea with their biscuit?
obviously they had an hour and 45 to make 16 maple leaf cream cookies, which was basically a counting challenge. It was also though where it was tricky was the thickness of the biscuit. And the thickness of the cream layer. And I was a bit surprised. This is what did surprise me about the technical.
Yeah.
So, when they were talking about the ratios,
Yeah.
Rochelle talked about the fact that the ratio needs to basically be biscuit, the cream needs to be about the same thickness as a biscuit, and then another layer of biscuit.
Yeah, okay. Well,
So, that made it tricky because you had to get the balance right.
absolutely. It's like if you were making Kingston Crowns or Monte Carlos, and
You wouldn't make Kingston's, but anyway.
No, you'd make Monte Carlos, right, for example, and you're making that marshmallowy jam centre. If you have too much, it's incorrect. If you have too little, it's like, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
You've got to get it just right.
And the other thing which was interesting too, and I think when I was talking to you about when it was on, we were talking about it, and I think I described it as it was like a crunchy on the outside melting moment. Because the way they described it, crisp on the outside, then soft inside, and then you hit the middle of it, and then it melts.
Yeah.
So it sounds fascinating as a biscuit. So the thickness of the cookie and the crunch and meltingness, and also the fact they were using maple butter.
Yes.
Which became, as we saw with Jude, a tricky element to use, especially if you're like, well, more maples never hurt anyone. It has now.
Yeah.
I like that James just suggested that Linda makes these in her sleep.
Well, as we saw, I loved this particular challenge just because we got to see peak Linda. It's Nonna in the kitchen, Grandma baking. She's pulled the biscuits out. They're on the cooling rack, and up comes the grandchild. Hi, Grandma. How are you today? Oh, you're baking. Oh, is this one for me?
Yes, young Dan. Yes, young Dan, I put my finger in that one. You can't serve that one with a fingerprint in it. Not even on the bottom. Not even on the bottom. They've got to be perfect. By the way, that was his second biscuit looted in the space of 2 people.
Yes.
Like, he'd already gone over and stolen one of Vandana's.
Of course,
And then he goes from Vandana and over to Linda, and he's like, I haven't had any biscuits. And she's like, okay.
And Donna says, yes, you have. Stop lying to your grandmother.
Oh, shush, love, leave him alone. He's just a boy. Tussles Dan's hair as he runs off. But what I really enjoyed was that, James suggested Linda's done it in her sleep. Then Linda talks to camera and basically goes, yeah, no, I do this all the time. It's really easy. Which was good.
3 a.m. I'm just whipping up some biscuits in my sleep. Or cookies, as they call them.
Now, it needed to be pipeable but not quite runny. And again, I got worried when Jude decided to experiment. It's the technical. You don't experiment in the technical.
The whimsy really
overflowed
in the technical when it really needed to be a little contained.
I mean,
not a little.
We talk
a
about
lot contained.
We talk a lot about the idea that in every one of these challenges, they don't give you something. In this case, it was the quantity of the icing they didn't. Really.
No, or any of the. They just said make the maple icing.
Yeah, they didn't give you any quantity. They gave all the ingredients. They gave you the ingredients,
but no quantities.
No quantities. And as I said, that was the problem because you've got to get the ratio. You get the ratio right, and that becomes really tricky. So we got everyone put their maple cookies in. Then we got the view of nature. We had birds chirping away, and then we had ducks, and then we had Sabrina. It was a perfect.
For a moment, I've gone. Was this supposed to be a shot of a moose?
Well, where is it? It's apparently, is it one of the bison somewhere? I mean, no, we cut to Sabrina looking at the oven going, it was just so well done. And also...
And it's those little moments that you don't twig in the initial one. I didn't twig on that. It's beautiful.
And then before obviously Dan went around on his cookie larceny, we got one of my favourite shots that you ever see in any form of bake-off, be it the tent, be it the shed, be it, in this case, obviously, the pavilion, or the rare case you saw anything that happened in Kiwi, which you didn't. But basically, it's the cookie wave.
Yes.
It's everyone with the cookie wave. So the sheet's out, cookie waving, and I think, it might even be later in this series, I think.
Someone brings in a fan.
Where they're waving, and I think it's like, everyone seems to be doing this, so I'm doing this too. No, it's next series, I think it is.
Yeah.
Where one of them's like, everyone seems to be waving, so I'm waving as well. It's like, why are you waving? I don't know, but everyone else is doing it, so I feel like this is something we need to be doing. And then Jude gave us, again, a more detailed explanation of what you wanted for the balance, where she said that it needs to be piping enough of this in to see the cream, but not so much that when you... So Jude, of course, breaking out technical terms. And look, that's what we're here for.
Yes.
We're here for Jude's highly technical understanding of the content. So...
you'd only really hear terms like that bandied around in the finest pastry.
Oh, Bruno in his
in
background. Look, I'm sure next time we talk to Bruno we can ask him, but I'm quite sure that obviously in his period of time in Paris, was a very common and well thought after phrase.
Absolutely, universal. Transcends cultures
and languages, definitely. So the blind judging. So Sabrina, they said that she had inconsistent colour. There was a very thin filling as well, and the cookie was a bit too strong.
Yes.
James, good design, good cookie, but more filling. Linda, good filling, good flavour. Basically, she nailed it. Terry's had good definition, but there was way too much sugar, and I think we pointed this out in the original podcast we did for this. She got kids, and she mentions it on there, and everything for this episode was a little bit too sweet. It's like, you got children. Of course they're
just like a death stare, though. And I think I misread it as a death stare, more of a, I hang around children too much. I really need some adult friends.
Yes.
Who's some adults I can bake for? I really hope that following Canadian baking show, she now has a bunch of adult friends
that she can bake for.
Maybe
with some booze. Vandana, they said they looked good, but there was no maple flavour whatsoever. Jude's had too much sugar, needed more filling, and the butter to icing sugar ratio was off. And again, Jude gave the impression like someone had just told her, hand back your passport. You are no longer Canadian.
Yes. Across the border, you are now a United States of America citizen.
Definitely even do that to her.
We banish you.
Julian's were pale, but they said the cookie was quite good, but he needed a bit more filling.
You get Trumpified if you fail Canada.
No one deserves that.
It's like,
So in the technical, Jude was 7th, Terry was 6th.
The new Siberia.
Jude was 7th, Terry was 6th, Sabrina was 5th, Vandana's was 4th, Julian's was 3rd, James was 2nd, and Linda was 1st, and there was absolutely no shock to that.
Absolutely.
Linda's looked amazing. Then we come to, obviously, the showstopper. 12 donuts, 6 in one flavour and 6 in another. Now, this was interesting. I'll run through the flavours first, and then we'll come back and talk about them. So, James went with an Okanagan peach beignet and a French Gruyere. He was the first one person to do 2 completely different types of dough.
Yeah.
Jude's were called C2C donuts, and we'll come to those in a minute, but she had one which was like octopus and one which was starfish.
Let's just say the C's weren't shining.
No, they weren't. For glazed canoe and Nova Scotia rum runner donuts for Julian, and the rum runners were more slowly walking.
Can I just say glazed canoe sounds like a strand of cannabis that
it does.
Sold? Okay.
Creed Bratton is there. So Linda, maple bacon and then double donuts. Oh, they look big. They look really good. Sabrina had s'mores that she made, and then she made poutine, and I loved the little poutine that we'll get to that. Terry was marshmallow puff and maple glazed donuts, and I'm not doing the marshmallow puff justice. We'll describe them in a little bit. Holy shit balls. And Vandana. Now, Vandana made sour cherry lemonade donuts.
Yum.
And Saskatoon berry white chocolate.
Now, that is a brilliant segue into what a special treat we have on the podcast tonight. So, all the way from Saskatoon in Canada.
From Saskatchewan, yes.
We have received some Saskatoon berries. Now, we've got some in dark chocolate, which I'm quite looking forward to, and we've got some freeze-dried ones. Now,
so some berries in dark chocolate.
Now, these have been sent to us by Jodie, who is also...
If you've never seen Bake Off...
Season 3.
Wait till Season 3.
Yeah, she's amazing, highly skilled woman who just... like, I don't know, she just kind of farts creativity in her sleep. Like,
she farts creativity.
Like, it just oozes out of every pore in her body.
So we have...
Yes.
Yeah, so we have some dried Saskatoon berries.
Now, on first looking, they do look different to freeze-dried blueberries.
They look more like a pharaoh's testicle.
Tiny pharaoh testicles.
Tiny pharaoh's testicles. Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
So obviously, while we're talking about all of this, I'm actually taking some photos, which I will put up.
And I read that Saskatoon is the Cree word for these berries, which gave the name to the city. So that's one thing. Jodie's of the Cree Nation as well, and she sent this beautiful berry-inspired beadwork as well, which
it's very pretty.
It is just, like I said, this woman just oozes creativity.
So shall we?
All right, let's do this.
Cheers.
Cheers. They've got a slightly more raspberry flavour.
I was expecting more blueberry.
I was expecting it to be tartar.
They're not that tart.
These are really nice.
Look, we're not just saying this for the
No.
like, because you know me, I couldn't wait to shit all over these. But that's not bad, actually. That's quite good.
That's really pleasant. Now, they're known by different names around the country there.
So,
we're now trying it with chocolate because...
Trying them with chocolate because everything's better with chocolate. Oh, yeah.
After doing some digging into our experience...
They are really good.
They're definitely not a blueberry flavour.
Enjoy your podcasting because, like, we're eating and podcasting, which is not really a good visual medium. But dear God, that is quite good.
It's a really unique,
yeah, they are different. They're not a blueberry. No. They're closer to a raspberry in flavour than a blueberry. But they're not raspberry.
No,
they're not tart. You're expecting a really tart sort of hit like a blueberry, and you don't get that.
No,
they're sweet. It's sweeter. It's
sweeter, lighter.
It's a little bit like a blueberry, but it's sweeter.
Yeah.
If you sweetened a blueberry, I think that's where you get.
Yeah.
Take the tartness away. I like those. They're actually quite good. So apologies, Canada. Mm-hmm. Saskatoon berries are real.
They are very real,
and they are quite good.
They're very delicious. Now, this is adding fuel to my theory about what happened to us.
Okay, what happened to us?
Okay, so as people know, a year ago we headed over to Regina.
We, of course, ran the international version of the Vergies in the Regina Casino car park.
And was supposed to be fully funded by the Saskatoon Berries Association of Australia.
Yep.
We were very happy with that. They said, spend whatever you want.
Big berry, yep.
We will reimburse you. Okay. After tasting those berries, which are fucking phenomenal, okay, I have a feeling that, yes, that company was fake, but I think it was set up by Big Blueberry.
So you think Big Blueberry is trying to throw off Saskatoon berries?
Yeah, it's like, we don't want you in the market. We're already competing with strawberries and raspberries. We can't have blueberries in here. We've put the gooseberry down.
We've renamed it to get it out of the berry.
Yeah.
Get it out of berry sphere.
Exactly. So... we don't want this additional berry.
You might be right. You might actually be right. But look, okay, again, hands up. 100% Saskatoon berries, I'm on board. That was actually really bloody good. And again, not just saying this because we got them, free. Legitimately, if they were crap, I'd crap all over them. But, because, it's a great bit for the podcast, but I can't kind of keep crapping on them because they're really good. Anyway...
I'm still munching on them, sorry.
Let's get into the donut challenge. Now, Sabrina missed a trick. Because Sabrina
could have been eating these Saskatoon berries.
Well, apart from that, Sabrina said, this dough is everything. And she had a chance to say, this dough is nuts. And I was so disappointed. Because, for a donut challenge, surely, you've got to understand your puns. You're in Bake Off. Don't say this dough is everything.
Yeah.
This dough is nuts. You laugh, you throw your head back. It's a great soundbite.
Yeah. It's just...
James has also worked out the other way to survive Bake Off.
How's that?
Learn what the judges like. In this case, Bruno loves butter.
Add some butter.
He's like, I've learnt one thing. Bruno loves butter. And you see him like, stick of butter, stick of butter, stick of butter. What is it? It's a butter sculpture.
In the shape of a donut.
Now, what did you think about Terry's? Because Terry talked about the idea that play dates, she makes donuts, which Rochelle was like mind blown for.
There are women in this world, and fathers too, mind you, okay? Parents in this world. There is a certain group of parents who are super parents, and like, don't get me wrong, I think all parents have a pretty challenging and important role in life, and they've all got their challenges and stuff, but there's this group of parents who have this creativity and make it so easy to look like, I'm just going to whip up some fresh donuts for my children who and their friends who they're inviting over to play with.
What I really enjoyed, by the way...
She's probably set up a bespoke, crafting station for them.
Now, everyone, have you got a take-home bag?
Yeah, like a treasure hunt at the back.
What I want a couple of things. First of all, obviously Terry had to say that she makes donuts for play dates because it was better than the previous thing she used to do, which, of course, was crocodile feeding. But secondly, and far more importantly, no wonder she's popular when you see especially the size of those marshmallows. They were fucking ginormous. At one point, Bruno walked past doing the stare as it blocked out his head. It was an eclipse. Bruno's walking past and you lost him behind a marshmallow donut.
Yeah.
And Terry at one point even looked at them and went, that's a lot bigger than usual. I wasn't expecting that to happen.
She's like, I wanted to make them adult size, not children size, but this is... Maybe the children size ones are actually the adult size ones.
But this is clearly why the children are... And as they said when they were judging them, they're like...
Go around to Thompson's place.
They're like, you know what? There's a lot of sugar in this. Mm-hmm. A marshmallow is all sugar, and this is sugar, and this is sugar, and this is... Pardon me, everything that's berries coming back. Everything that she made was sugar. But that's how you know she's got kids. Mm-hmm. And this is how you know, everyone else is baking for, gourmet and stuff like that. And Bruno talking about on the podcast where he was talking about making the Jell-O display, which was his high-end Jell-O display. Meanwhile, we're talking about someone who makes donuts for kids. So obviously, there's going to be more kids. A lot of sugar. I also believe that Vandana originally, obviously now we've had some Saskatoon Berries, but I felt like her selection of Saskatoon Berry is trolling. Because she went with vegetarian in the first challenge and then she went with Saskatoon Berries. And I just felt like she was trolling me or testing my love.
You reckon?
Maybe she was testing my love.
Just going...
I feel like James and Vandana...
This person who I've never met...
And who doesn't
know me for
another year. We've often said that I feel like they go back in time and go forward in time and they jump all around what we say because we are that important. No, we're really not. We're really not. That was good timing, by the way. I said we really are that important and our cat, Polly, goes... so she laughed at that point. Well done, Polly.
She's less like Leo, the roving reporter, and more like...
social commentary.
Yeah, Waldorf and Statton in there.
Yeah, she's a Waldorf and Statler in the corner.
Locked in for another show.
So when they announced that Jude was serving up what they called originally Seaside Surprise, I was terrified that it was going to be salmon beignets. I just had this hunch. And then they showed what she was making, and I'm like, they're just shaped like seaside creatures. They're not filled with smoked salmon.
I like the idea of the jelly-filled jellyfish. I thought that was very cute.
But then Linda produced bacon.
And this
was the interesting thing. Linda sort of... I wonder if Jude, kind of knowing that she was not long for this world, passed the Canadian mantle.
Onto Linda.
Because Linda made hockey sticks, which might have melted because it was ridiculously hot, and as Bruno talked about on the pod, and all the bakers have talked about, Jude talked about on the pod, that pavilion is stupidly hot. But the hockey sticks all melted. But you had hockey sticks and bacon.
Which?
On top of Linda's. It feels like Linda was like, I see where you're going. We're going to lose you. I've got you.
But even though Jude, passed the Canadian baton on, I feel that, it kind of swept over, God, I can't remember. James's area.
I was wondering where you were going with that for a minute.
My brain. Far out.
It's the berries.
It's the berries.
Maybe are they forgetful berries?
What?
Have we checked if they wipe
what
their memory?
berries?
Exactly. Anyway, moving on. You can tell, though, that there are occasional moments where you can see that this is very early in the run. And there was one moment where James was talking about his peach donuts. And they cut to a shot of Rochelle. And Rochelle says, can you tell us how you're using peach in your donut? And it was the most forced recut question I think I've ever seen asked. Where they've obviously just had a chat and they've gone, ask him about the peach. Okay. So, can you tell us about how you're going to use peach in your donut?
He's like, well, I had a giant peach.
Oh, don't do that.
James and the giant peach. Here I am, Roald Dahl reference.
I also really enjoyed that Julian also got more of the spirit of Bake Off in when he decided to go with triple sec.
Mm-hmm. He's like, let's just get them all drunk. And the drunker the better.
But I wonder if the triple sec had a bit of an impact on the rum runners.
Yeah.
Because they didn't so much puff up as look like coasters.
It was like it was a star falling back in on itself. It just... You're right, coasters, you could have whacked your brewski on it. Celine Dion could have come in on that moose.
And you had a brewski in hand.
Yeah.
But they really did sort of collapse upon themselves. They did go supernova. And it was fascinating to watch.
Yeah. There is something, though, for me, about watching donuts cook that's so satisfying. Like, just
it was all-encompassing.
Just watching
It's one of... The montage of the donuts cooking... is one of the best bake-off montages I've ever seen.
Yeah, and like I love a yeasted donut filled with jam.
So this is where I was going to go. So obviously your donut of choice would be
jam ball.
Yeah, you do love a jam ball. You are a big fan of
with the
jam
crunchy sugar on the outside, not the icing sugar.
Yeah, I'm more. I'm a bit weird with donuts. So I like.
You like fresh cinnamon.
I like a fresh cinnamon donut. The second it gets even slightly stale or slightly solid, I don't like them.
Now, if you were in miscellaneous City...
Well done. Miscellaneous Sydney.
In a place called Darling Harbour.
We're discovered. Go on.
Back in the late 80s, early 90s, and you're roaming around as a teenager there, you'd go past the donut shop and watch the donuts being cooked.
They're brilliant. I get fresh. Literally out of the fryer into the cinnamon, straight out. I love those.
Yeah.
The other one that I'm always a sucker for, though, is a cinnamon scroll.
Yeah, it's not a donut, though.
Yeah, we'll come to that. But
it's more like a bun.
More like a bun? No, it's not a bun.
It's It's a bro. It's a bun. Okay, it's a scroll. A scroll's a scroll. Okay.
Toll's a toll.
And a roll's a roll.
And a roll's a roll. And we're getting very Robin Hood Men in Tights here. So,
but you know what I mean? Like, it's not a donut. That's a scroll. But it's still in a bakery section, but it's not a donut.
Technically, what do we think then of Sabrina's stick donuts, which are not really a...
Well, you know, the Mexican donuts are, like the churros, are done like that. They're a yeasted dough that's deep fried. And I think, you know, a donut doesn't have to be a round shape, because let's think, when you go to Donut King, they've got dinosaurs. They've got people.
Of course, the authority, trees. The leading authority on donuts in the planet. Donut King. No.
And jam balls, which are round, and we had a canoe-shaped donut tonight, so why not a stick?
We had a canoe shape. Julian gave us a Flat Earth Society donut. It was great.
We had a
we love you, Julian.
Jellyfish donut.
Now Jude overproved her dough. This was good too. Not the fact she overproved her dough, but what was good was we got the explanation, the really good explanation from Michelle, where she was talking about the idea of the issue about what was going on with Jude's donuts, because they went really dark and Jude couldn't work that out. Couldn't work out why they seemed to be taking on a lot of oil. And as Rochelle then said, the problem is that when you get a dough that's really tight and it's overproved, what ends up happening is when you put it in the oil, it just basically sucks up all of the...
But what Rochelle did, she used the technical term back to Jude to show that she's on the same level and went...
Yeah, she did. She went, you're right. So because of the... It basically loaded them up, and that's where Jude went, oh no, it wasn't double, I overproved it was like triple and a half. And you just saw Rochelle's, oh God. Like, Rochelle looked at her and went, oh God, no wonder. So we also got more technical terms, because then when they were getting ready and they were talking about the s'mores, and Julia looks at Sabrina and goes, so the s'mores, now you're going to use the thing on them? And they're like, yes, the torch, yes. So, obviously, we got into then the end of the challenge and the judging. And look, we love you, Jude. But Jude and Julian were the two.
Yeah, they were neck and neck.
Now, while Julian's didn't rise, Jude just took on so much oil.
Yeah.
And they said the filling was quite good, but the other problem that she had was that the second one's the starfish.
Yeah.
The texture on her icing was grainy. And they said it hadn't been...
Whereas Julian's canoes were good.
Yeah.
So it came down to that.
Saved by the canoe.
Yeah, and also Jude was last in the technical.
Yeah, the last it was one of the rare times where the technical mattered.
Yeah.
Julian came third in the technical, so that sort of... And again, Jude had a couple of issues.
And Julian's pie was good. Apart from
Jude had a couple of issues with the tortilla as well.
Yeah.
Now, as for Star Baker, it was either going to be Linda or James.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like they looked at it and went, well, we're sending the Canadian home. What about the Brit Canadian?
Let's keep him there.
Let's do that.
Send him home in British Week, though.
No spoilers, and no, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
Or he does. Who knows? We're not telling you. But basically, James got first, and very well deserved.
Absolutely.
But both of them deserved. Like, you could have given it to Linda, you could have given it to James.
I would have been happy either way. It didn't really matter.
Wouldn't have mattered.
I did think James got extra points for hanging his donuts on a moose head.
Oh, 100%. Like, that was playing to the audience. And I love again where...
I wonder if that's a Canadian pastime. Throw the donuts on the moose.
Well, a bit like the idea of quoits.
It's like quoits.
Canadian quoits on a moose.
It's
moits. We got some interesting Australiana in the judging too.
Yes, we did. She called the poutine fries chips.
Very Australian.
And what was the other thing she said?
She got it very MasterChef. She said bang up.
Bang on.
She was bang on. It was bang on, and this is absolutely bang on.
Yeah.
It was half a step away from going MasterChef judging and banging and cracking.
It's fully banging.
Fully banging. So that was Canadian Week.
It was great. I love the rewatch, and I'm really glad that we're doing this.
I'm really enjoying it, and obviously we're really happy to have everyone else on board.
Mm-hmm.
So we will be back next week, definitely, but possibly in the meantime, maybe with something Bake Off, maybe with something from another show. Who the hell knows? Not me. I would never foretell that. Anyway, until next week, I'm still Chris.
And I'm still Kristie.
And we will catch you all later.
Ciao.